Hi and welcome to the Homeopathy Health Show. I'm Atiq Ahmed Bhatti, a fourth generation homeopath with over 25 years of professional experience and practice in this field of healing. The Homeopathy Health Show is the online voice of homeopathy around the world, promoting and raising awareness of this truly unique system of healing, which is suitable for all ages, young and old. Every week I invite guests from the world of homeopathy to come and share their experiences, their work, offer insights, and essentially talk all things homeopathy. Why not visit www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast button to listen to the latest episodes. So let's begin today's show here on UK Health Radio, the world's #1 talk health radio. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Homeopathy Health Show, and as always, I'm your host, Atiq Ahmed Bhatti. Now, I am really happy and delighted to welcome Anna Maria Price on today's show. Now, Maria, as she likes to be called, is a homeopath for the last 10 years or so, and has some really interesting stories and some really interesting insights. So I am going to be asking her a number of questions, and it's going to be another amazing episode. So without further ado, Anna Maria Price, I'm really delighted that you're actually on the show. So thank you so very much.
It's a pleasure to be here and get the opportunity to share my story, which I like.
It's brilliant. All homeopaths. I love all homeopaths. I love all students of homeopathy. I love even a bar of soap. If it was made from homeopathy, I'd love that too, you know.
I'm sure there is.
Actually, that's an idea, isn't it, though? So you have a very interesting journey to homeopathy, which actually includes a charity trek in the Himalayas. So do share how that came about.
That came about, it was 2007, and I imagine I was having one of those probably a bit early midlife crisis. I'd raised my 3 sons, and I'm thinking, I seemed to need a challenge just to feel something really different. And so this leaflet came through the door saying ActionAid and I liked ActionAid. I already donated to that charity. What I liked about ActionAid was they use the people who are in the country, who live in the country, to run their shelters, to run their charity actions. So they don't import their charity workers. So that means that whenever there's a problem in the country and many aid agencies are told to leave. If you said that to ActionAid in India, there wouldn't be anybody to leave because the people that run the charities there are all the local people or people who belong there. And I thought that was a really clever thing because it was so empowering. Anyway, so I liked ActionAid. This leaflet comes through the door. We always think life isn't planned out for us, but it is. And it said charity trek across the Himalayas to Dharamsala, which is up in the north, where the Dalai Lama is in refuge with the Tibetan people. And I thought, oh yeah, I really fancy going up there and listening to the Dalai Lama speak. India, what a world apart from my world. So I floated it with the family. Can't say it went down well. And off I went. I had a whole year of training because you had to trek in the Himalayas, and it wasn't actually beyond the average healthy person, but it's very up and down. And so I trained in different places in the UK for a year beforehand, lots of preparation. We were going to be intense. And so, yeah, big stuff. Got to Heathrow Airport and went through customs, went through passport. And then as we're coming to board, I've got no passport. I couldn't find it anywhere. This is just leading into my stress that occurred. And I couldn't find it anywhere. And everybody had checked everywhere. So the other 14 people boarded the plane, 14 people I'd never met before that were on the trek, boarded the plane and left me sitting at the gate on my own. My bag was took off. And I just sat there wondering what this was all about. You know, I'd spent a year training. Was this a bad decision? My husband had taken 2 weeks off work, 3 weeks off work, the family. And then as I threw my coat down on my lap, I felt the square passport in the lining of my coat. Now, you know, when you come through customs and they're rushing you and you're pulling everything out of the tray,
Hmm.
as I put my passport in my hand down my coat, it had gone into the lining where there was a rip.
I see.
My hand had come out the other end and I hadn't even noticed my passport wasn't still in it because of the flurry of doing everything. So I felt it. And I jumped up and I said to the girl, I'm getting on the plane. She said, you can't, your bag's off. I said, I don't care. I've got walking boots on me and that's all I need. And so I ran down the thing, got on the plane in a state of shock. Anyway, they put my bag back on. So I'm now in a very heightened emotional state. And I arrive in Delhi from Bishop Stortford at night. And it's an assault on the senses for me, like nothing else. I couldn't take in everything that I was seeing.
Hmm.
So I arrive at we were in a hotel for the first night and I am literally shaking from head to toe and I'd never experienced anything like it. I couldn't control myself. And this girl who I was sharing the room with, whom I'd never met, said to me, you're in shock. I'm going to give you some arnica. I'm like, I don't know what on earth you're talking about. I'm 42 and I've never heard of homeopathy. Not a glimmer of it. Isn't that, I mean, I think that's incredible now when people will come in the store and they're like, homeopathy, what do you mean? And I'm like, yeah, I know that place. Never heard of it. So she said, I've got arnica. I want you to take it. And I said, I'll take anything. I'm in a mess. So she gave me this arnica. I lay down in the bed and within about 15 minutes, I was so calm that I just thought she was some kind of miracle worker. So I'm like, what's this? And she's like, well, this is my homeopathic kit. I'm a homeopathic student. I said, okay, lovely. Well, I don't know what that was. Then we went on the trek. And there she was with this blue, it was a Helios blue kit, actually, dealing with everyone. People who had diarrhea, out came the kit. They were better. I actually pulled a muscle. Well, I didn't pull a muscle. I don't know what I did, but I turned around with my leg one day with a heavy bag and something popped. And I sat down on the floor and I said, I can't walk today's trek because I've done something. And she said, oh, hold on a minute. Actually came with something else for me. I stood up 10 minutes later and I'm like, this is miracle stuff. So I was so at that point, I'm like, when I get home, the first thing I'm going to do is find out what homeopathy is. And then the trek continued. We went to Dharamsala. We had an amazing time. The wonderful thing I'd say to anyone about doing that kind of charity trek is you really feel the country. You're not a tourist. You're not on holiday. We went to the Delhi street projects. We went round all the places that the locals might go. We ate, we cooked en route. So it was very I loved it. Came straight home and I thought, I don't think there's going to even be a return on the search for this, but I'll try it. So I put homeopathy colleges. Came Allen College, which was a 45-minute drive from my house. 5th generation Indian homeopathic college. So I'm thinking, there's no mistake here. So went for an interview and started a 4-year part-time course, which changed me as a person, opened a whole world up to me of healing, of autonomy over our own well-being, taught me huge amounts of how to be an unprejudiced observer, which obviously I'm not 100%, but it moved into my own personal life, those kind of learnings. So I had a wonderful time there for 4 years, met homeopathic friends that I'm still in contact with now. And I go back. Allen College is a good college in as much as it has every 6 to 8 weeks a clinic, which is very busy. So homeopaths can come and get their clinic hours if their college doesn't provide it, or if they just want to do postgrad. It's a very busy college, so it's very good. So I stayed in contact with that. But when I qualified, which was 2011, I booked myself on the 2012 trip to Calcutta to do the 3 weeks, nearly 3 weeks, in the rural clinics and the slum clinics. Amazing time. Teaching in the day. Once again, very real, because we're staying in a college with the locals. I walked to college every day. It was about a half an hour walk through the streets, very incredible place, and learnt loads. And I learned at that point, you don't have to apologize for homeopathy. In this country, there's so much sort of like, we don't like to say we used homeopathy. We don't want to tell the vet we used it on our pet. We don't want to say to the doctor when we go back and we're better, well, actually, I used homeopathy. There's all this like, oh, I'll only have to explain or I'll have to say something. But when I went to Calcutta, we've just got our massive homeopathic cancer hospitals. We've got, and I'm like, wow, you can say that here. It was amazing. So, yeah, I wonderful time. And learning about case taking. I'd say one of the things that stuck with me dramatically about that observation of case taking there was the emotional picture. You know, in the West, we seem to be much more emotionally aggravated. Or even maybe that's not the right way. I think about my parents who were Irish immigrants. They were from farms. The idea that you were happy or disappointed or was life good enough for you seemed to center around, did we all have food? Do we have shelter? Yeah, so actually around here, that's good. So there was no big questionings about emotional. But if you ask somebody in the rural clinics who were drinking fairly heavy arsenic water and very used to people in their families dying, what makes you happy? What makes you sad? The kind of things we ask people here. What's your likes and dislikes? What's your food preferences? Sometimes they were like, well, we eat whatever comes along, and we're very happy. We've got our children. None of our children have perished. So it's a bit of an eye-opener in that way as well. I'm not discounting emotion, but I think if your basic needs aren't met, the emotions are not the uppermost thing. It made the prescribing very interesting as well, because you kind of had your three-legged stool more than realms and realms of notes. Just, there were people in the clinic, it's cultural stuff to take on board. There were people in the clinic who were speaking on behalf of their wives, and their wives didn't know they'd had a hysterectomy because they didn't understand what had happened when they went to hospital. So the husband would be speaking. It was shocking to the likes of me, but a wonderful teaching and a wonderful way of showing how you can make homeopathic case taking a little bit clearer. I don't know what anybody else is like, but I can have a new patient and I can be there for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I can go down too many rabbit holes. I can try and gather too much information and lose myself in the woods of all of that information. So it's very good for showing you how to stay focused on the things that the person has said that are actually important. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. And I would love to maybe go back again. They do a lovely thing on this trip that they do, because it's intense. You have 3 or 4 days away somewhere lovely. So we took a small plane to Darjeeling.
Nice tea.
But the air is so clear there. It's higher up. And it's ridiculously colonial still. It's got gymkhana clubs and all sorts of cricket clubs. It's got very Englishy things from when in the English army and different things were stationed there. And it's got like a church, like St. John's Church you might see in Kent or somewhere. So it's a very interesting experience. Beautiful though, absolutely beautiful. So yeah, that was my experience of going back to India in a very different context. But it kind of tied the bow, because that's where my homeopathic journey began. Getting into Allen College and experiencing that there was just almost like, that was definitely the way it was going to be. And then going back, and yeah, got a lot of literature when I was there from different doctors, because some prescribe purely in LMs. They're LM doctors. They don't touch any other. And obviously I was but I was classically trained, which brings me on to my Bachelor of Science degree at College of Homeopathic Education.
Yeah, no, it's, before you go there, I was just going to say to you that it's I always say to people as a joke that if you want to really learn to drive and you want to be a good driver, then go to places like India or Pakistan, and trust me, you'll know how to drive a car. You'll be Formula One level, because you have got cows and donkeys. You've got people who really are not bothered. It's you who has to be in control and aware fully. No one is going to, and even as a pedestrian, actually, no one's going to brake for you. That it doesn't work that way. But funnily enough, it works. That chaos of driving and everything, right?
Yeah.
And then when you look at homeopathy, I think you've had the best possible grounding that anyone could have, because in India, homeopathic medicine and homeopathy is standard. Everybody grows up with it. Everybody talks about it. Everybody knows about it. Not everybody, but a large majority, certainly maybe even all, have used it at some point in their life. There are dispensaries and clinics and doctors at every corner of every street. And you can, like you said, you can sing homeopathy, and you don't have to worry, oh, someone's going to say this or someone's going to ask. Everybody is literally on the same hymn sheet, right? As far as healthcare.
Yeah.
And they have different options. But to be involved and to be able to see so many patients on a day, like I know so many homeopathic doctors from India, friends of mine, some have been on the show as well, and they're seeing upwards to 100 patients a day. Now, here in the UK, you know that it's just not possible, okay? And nor does that ever happen. Just 10 patients a day sometimes is and you think, oh my God, 10 patients.
Oh, that would be a lot.
But when you have 100, isn't that the best possible education? Because you're really in on the deep end, and you've got to think, don't you? Remedies, modalities, you've got to think constitutions, you've got to think acutes and complex acutes and so many other things. And it molds you, doesn't it? And your own skills then come out, and you can hone in and become your homeopath, the one you want to be, because it's an art, isn't it? So
absolutely.
And it's just amazing, isn't it?
It is amazing. And I would so recommend that if anybody is at a stage in their homeopathic practice or journey where they feel a bit knocked back, or they feel a bit discouraged, or they've read the latest thing about what some people are saying about homeopathy, or somebody's telling them not, I know it might sound a little bit rich, but if there was any way they could get themselves on the Allen College trip in the sort of February, it's a tonic. It's a tonic. It's just like, yeah, I knew I was right about this. I knew this is a healing art worth pursuing. It's yeah, and so much more. We just fed through a very tiny little slit of information in this country where you would get the impression, oh, that's been banned or that's been stopped because somebody's read something about it coming off the NHS, so I'd say, yeah, if you're ever despondent, or maybe maybe not India, even though I just think that's the mecca of homeopathy. But anywhere where you can really be revitalized. George Vatulkas does a wonderful course on Alonosis in Greece. I mean, all these wonderful places you can go to the guys getting better at your homeopathy. Wonderful. His big college is there, and he offers 2-week courses. I went on one of those to Alonosis. And once again, you're just surrounded by homeopaths from all over the world who choose to make this their holiday break. None of it's cheap, but that's their holiday. It was my holiday that year. And sharing the experiences and hearing about how other countries are coping with, even if it's restrictions, or what way around it, or what can you draw upon, especially European things and that. So I just think if you feel at all isolated, you should reach out for somewhere and it could be much, much closer to home, where you can just see there's so much health and awareness of homeopathy, and the community is good. The homeopathic community is good. And that propaganda is about all there is that's bringing it down. It's not what's happening on the ground.
It's not. It's certainly not. I remember when I started off in homeopathy, my uncle was a homeopath in Kenya, and I went there, and I did a number of things there, and one of those was obviously shadowing him. And it was just amazing because the phone would ring, not, continuously from morning to night. And this is the landline and then the mobile. And then every few minutes, or certainly, several times an hour, the bell would ring outside and there would be a patient. And juggling all that and seeing how he prescribed and how he practiced and remedies and that almost beautifully free way of prescribing, and being able to hone in on what was wrong with him just by observation. You mentioned that you can, go down certain rabbit holes, but I actually think they're really, really important because they paint a profile, and eventually, and I'm sure you're going to agree with this, but it comes that moment, that light bulb moment comes, and you think, ding, that's the remedy or remedies. The remedy or remedies come to mind, and you think, okay, it's that. And I picked that up, but I always used to. I'm still, amazed that skill, isn't it? It takes so long to pick up. You have to see so many patients over such a long period of time to be able to say, somebody walking through the door, that's definitely calcarb, or that's natmure, or that's pulsatilla, and the first sentence, and it proves that they are. And that's, to do with the way they sit, the mannerisms, the psyche, mental, emotional, or it could just be an acute, right? Just physicals.
Yeah, I think that when people come into the pharmacy and it's evident that what they need is a consult, their psoriasis for 20 years is not something I've got a combo out the back for, they will say to me, who should I choose? Well, we also have a clinic. And so we have a printed leaflet, or it's on our website, of people who hire our clinic, the practitioners. And I know most of them, if not all of them. And I always say, you start with the first one and you chat for 10 or 15 minutes, and you work out whether that energy between you two, whether that dialogue makes you feel like, I want to talk to that person more. Because as far as I'm concerned, a homeopath is a detective. It's someone who's looking for clues, trying to speak to the symptom language of your body. And I always say to people, if you don't want to tell me your clues, I will pick the wrong remedy. So, like when you ask people their likes or their dislikes, or even their food preferences, if you would prefer to eat sweets all day long, don't tell me you like leafy green veg, because you're going to get the wrong remedy. So all I'm saying to people is, when you speak to the inquiry with a homeopath, you've got to think, I want to sit down and talk to that homeopath. It doesn't matter whether they've been practicing 10 years or 30 years or 2 years. If you've got a rapport, then you'll be honest, and they will be able to serve you better. Now, that's what I think in this environment. That's obviously not the case when you've got 45 people outside your door in a rural clinic somewhere. That's completely a different ballgame. But here, for sure, I think you've got to be feeling comfortable and willing to open up. At least not everybody does it on the first console. And, in that case, if I feel like somebody's really not opened up on the first, or I can't really draw much out of them, it's a kind of, no, I'm not hot or cold. No, poos are normal, all the usual stuff that we go through. Then I'll think, okay, we're going to open the case with this medicine. We're going to start here, because I wouldn't say to them, I'm not sure, but I would sort of say, we're going to have to start somewhere here. And we've got a limited picture or a one-sided case or whatever. So I do think the rapport with your homeopath is the most important thing, not whether they've seen an awful lot of women with menopause or an awful lot of children or whatever. That's my understanding anyway. And that's the kind of advice I would give to somebody trying to choose a homeopath. Also, if you can possibly see them in person, and this is just a preference, Most people worked on Zoom, thank goodness, throughout COVID. Otherwise, people wouldn't have had access, and lots of people can't get out. But in my practice, I don't use Zoom. I only see people in person in my own little consult room here in my house. That's just the way I work better. It's the way I work better. So, yeah, I don't know how we got to that bit, but yeah, we're talking about.
No, it's I think what you've spoken about with case taking is and the rapport is so very important. I just think that as homeopaths, actually it's a reel I shared just recently on my Insta, which is about the fact that any homeopath or healer becomes a custodian of the patient until the time of that their dis-ease becomes ease. And it takes me actually to another point. Just a few days ago, I was talking to a patient, and sometimes it takes a bit of time, like you've mentioned. And the mother was present, and the patient himself, and there was this reservation. So what I did, I said, okay, look, this is how homeopathy works within literally 3 minutes, and this is why it's so important to give certain symptoms. And by the end, we were laughing and joking, and it worked really, really well. And I saw this transformation, and I thought, wow, she feels better because she got half of it off her chest during the last 30 minutes or whatever it was, 40 minutes, And it's such a change, isn't it? It's just the need that the homeopath has to be able to listen and not necessarily, unless it's obviously a homeopathy first aid, or it's an acute, which is very dead simple and straightforward, let's say. But generally, these cases are, or majority of times, are chronic, and there's a lot of mental, emotional baggage. But you can see how that once someone has spoken to someone else about it and they feel an element of trust, how they change. And 50% of the cure is there. That's actually it.
I totally agree. I totally agree that to give somebody an hour or two of your undivided, and when I say unprejudiced, I just mean, like, I'm not judging. I don't feel the need to judge whatever someone says, because I'm focused on trying to get them to tell me their truth so I can be a better homeopath. I think the energy of that space, the confidentiality, the fact that they are not being judged, the fact that they can't actually say anything wrong, so they can just speak freely. I'm completely with you. I have had people leave, and about 4 weeks later, when I check in and see how you're doing, do you need a follow-up? Some people have said, I'm great, but I didn't take the medicine. And I'll say, you're great, I'm great. I don't care if they took the medicine or not. But so I know for sure that so much work is done in the sharing of that space where you actually listen to someone and allow them to be who they are, without having to think, how do I need to be in reaction with this person? Make no mistake, it's a real healing art. And I remember when the Science and Technology Commission, a committee thing in 2010, was discussing homeopathy, I actually think, I can't remember who it was now, which one of the politicians was saying that the PPR, the patient-practitioner relationship, was an essential aspect of the homeopathic practice. One would have imagined it should be of the doctor's practice, but we are led to believe now that doctors are too busy to have that patient-practitioner relationship. So that's one of the things where I think it falls down a bit there, that there isn't a connection of some sort.
Well, that's not a bad thing, right? Because that's where homeopathy, every system of medicine, and there are many, has its own place. And this is how it was always meant to be, that this was the place for homeopathy, where you can just listen and you could give that opportunity. So if 10 people come with the same problem of, let's say, I don't know, high blood pressure or hypertension medically, let's say, it's always going to be different. It's never going to be the same. It never is. Whether or not, one thing is for sure, the medicine, it may be, the conventional medicine may be the same. They're on 80 milligram of this and 10 of this, or 5, or blah, blah, blah. But the cause and effect, the etiology of it is totally different in every patient. And that's the art, isn't it? It's the fine brush strokes, isn't it, that you're sort of painting, on the canvas, and you're thinking, okay, well, this is that color, and this is this, and this is that, and that's the remedy here, and and eventually you come to the totality of the remedies, and sometimes, I'm sure this has happened to you so many times, you don't need to repertorize, the remedy, right? And you think, the materia medica, or the repertory rather, might say it's that, but you think it's not, because of what they said, and you've got to go with your gut as well. I'm a big believer of that.
You do.
And it's never let me down, to be honest.
No.
So
George Vitilkus, who is a great, I mean, he's very old now, but he is a great. He developed a like radar, a computerized repertory. I've never used one, but he developed one of his own. I can't remember the name of it now, but anyway, he made us laugh so much because he was giving a lecture and he was using his own computer system to repertorize this case, and he goes, so you can see it's come up with calc carb. I won't give that. What he meant was,
brilliant.
Don't blindly just take it because I've written this thing. But it's not that. So this is a quantity driven thing, a computerized repertory of numbers, but you have to put a qualitative element in there and use your brain. So it was just a funny moment because he had actually devised it, and then I'm not going to go with what I've just put up there. But this is the humility as well of the greats, where they're not.
It's so important. That's such a wonderful story, because if we become too bogged down, and I honestly mean this, if we become too bogged down with just using a repertory, then how are we going to survive if we don't have the electronic version or the book version somewhere? And let's say we volunteered in a clinic and we're not going to have a clue.
No.
Part of the experience and learning and education is to know the remedies in your mind, and your mind is intelligent enough to guide you as long as the intentions are pure, and you want to get to the remedy. I found personally anyway that it works really well for me. Sometimes patients come and they said, oh, we've used a common remedy and this is what was given, and we've been to several homeopaths, and I say, well, let me try something. And I just give whatever I think at that time based on that patient, and it works, right?
I think that's it depends on your college, but at Allen College, Dr. Banerjee had swallowed Borika's Materia Medica, literally. And so he quotes chapter and verse of that without looking at it. And so we were taught on Materia Medica. We had repertories, but they were kind of like when you got stuck.
Yeah.
Not where you went to first. At least that's my take on it. And so I've never been brought up on a repertory. So they're there. And I sometimes will look when I've worked on my case and think, I wonder where that shows in the repertory. I wonder what it has to say about my choices as such. If it doesn't agree, it doesn't put me off. But it's there. It's in I have one. But usually it's something comes. I mean, I know it all. I know that at times people can think. I mean, I was looking over Edward Bach in case you wanted to talk about him because Nelsons has a huge, obviously does the.
I'd love to talk to him.
Center.
But I can't. I really would.
And what was I going to say? I don't know what I was going to say to you now. But anyway, I was going to say something about what.
If there's some way that you can get in touch with him, though.
Yeah, I'll have a go.
There are ways.
I've been to the Batch Centre. You'd feel you were in touch with him when you're wandering around all his home. He used to make his own furniture, so it was quite crude furniture, but he would make his own furniture.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Okay. Yeah, his house is kept as it was.
Right.
And it's quite interesting because that was the 1930-ish, 1930s, around that time, 1934, I think he moved there. What was interesting for me was looking at anywhere you needed to get a homeopathic remedy had to be Nelsons. Because so there'd be like volumes and volumes of remedies. Of course, not all of them are in existence anymore, because remedies can dry up and the, you know, feeder bottle can disappear, especially if they're remedies that have gone out of vogue, so nobody's using them anymore. But for me as a homeopath, that was quite an incredible thing. But yeah, I use batch as well. So yeah.
Which actually aptly takes us on to the batch flower remedies and the fact that you have studied them. You are a batch flower practitioner.
Yeah, yeah.
And for those who haven't actually picked up, Maria does work in Nelsons throughout the week, and we're going to go on to that as well. But I wanted to ask you about the batch flower practitioner, being a batch flower practitioner rather, and how do you use those remedies alongside homeopathy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a little confusion sometimes about batch, in as much as Edward Batch did the batch nosodes and was working in the homeopathic hospital. But he didn't succuss. He stopped. He first of all thought he would prepare the batch essences in a homeopathic fashion, succussing and that. But he stopped that. So batch flower essences aren't prepared like a homeopathic remedy. So they're not homeopathic, even though lots of people think they are. And because Nelsons are the main supplier around the world of them, they think that too. It's no problem thinking that. But they're not a homeopathic remedy in short. So for me, they dovetail lovely with homeopathy, especially when you have a case maybe more emotional, mental, but obviously showing with physical symptoms, because it's all connected. And you know that your prescription is going to start working on this. This is not going to be an overnight job. And you've explained this is going to take some time and we're going to be looking for which direction we're moving in. But if you give that person who might be very overwhelmed with everything, if you give them elm, then you hand them a bottle of elm and they can take elm 4 drops on their tongue 3 times a day. It's really good for an overwhelmed system, someone who's normally quite competent, but has just everything's become too much. That will immediately start to work on their emotional sphere, and it gives them something too. So, and they can take it alongside without contraindicating my medicine or making me wonder which one's doing what. So I do love batch for that. Rescue remedy, as you know, worldwide we sell rescue remedy, and it works. And rather like Edward would say, you know, he intuited a lot of this. He then did experiment with his intuition and use it on people and have many clinical notes as to how it affected their emotional sphere. But for me, it's just another tool in my toolbox, which doesn't hamper my homeopathy, gives the person something right there and then. And I don't give it to everybody at all, because it's just if it's really needed. If people are in a really state of no confidence or whatever, then to be able to hand them larch and say, take this now daily. I'm going to work on your case. I'll send you your medicine in the week. But you've got something here. Now you go. It's great. His initial thing was nosodes, the 7 batch nosodes, because he believed that the intestines held the secret to not getting disease. So it was like the early vaccinations, as they called it. Where are we now? The microbiome. I've been to lectures in Cambridge University. The microbiome, that's where it's all at. Microbiome transfers to help people be free of disease. That's what Edward Batch was doing with his nosodes.
Absolutely.
So we're just walking. We haven't even begun with this frequency medicine. So I just feel very excited about it all, as you can probably tell.
It's very, very exciting. No, I can see that. And for the listeners, of course, because we're recording the podcast, and I know, sadly, you may just have the audio, but there are reasons for that, of course. But I can see Maria. We're on Zoom and we're talking to one another and we're seeing one another. And I can see the passion and the sparkle there. And it's very motivational indeed. But it's so true. And you know what you've said about the understanding of homeopathy. I think this system of medicine is infinite. It's always going to be around. It's going nowhere. And the cases that are presented nowadays, and with what you've said about intention and the way remedies work and how the mind itself works, how that itself can get you better is so true. Because if you think you're going to get sick and you think of it enough times, you do actually end up getting sick. If you think you can't do something, you can't do something. And yet there are days when you think, I'm going to do such and such, and my God, what a productive day that turns out to be, isn't it? So what's that? What is that all? And we need to sometimes take a step back and just have time for reflection and time to think and time to ponder, and then that usually leads to a better understanding, and a better understanding usually leads to realization. Realization leads to acceptance. Acceptance leads to success.
Absolutely. Like you said, the old saying, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. Yeah, I had my eyes opened more when I went to the College of Homeopathic Education. I did a top-up degree just for a year on the back of the 4-year diploma, because they were offering it. And I just thought, I'm trying to get a little bit ahead here in case the government or someone decides you have to have a degree to practice homeopathy if you're not a doctor. So I did it for that reason. But it was good because it opened my eyes to the variety of ways in which people practice homeopathy and the variety of methods. Because I was so classically trained, it opened my eyes that, hey, there's a hell of a lot of people going on doing stuff here. And it led me to read the lesser writings of Hahnemann, which was so interesting because Hahnemann was a complete experimenter. And we could call him, Dr. Banerjee will probably tell me off about this now when he comes on, but we could call him dead classical Hahnemann, and he was, and the organon is classical. But when you read him and you look at when they finally could publish his case notes and things which were kept hidden for so long, he was trial and error. And if he was an infinite living man, who knows what he might be delving into now. Homeopathy he definitely meant it to be something that we kept reviewing, we kept developing, we kept testing, trying. What about this? So much as I have my bedrock of classical training, I am more intuitive in what else I might do with that. I don't want to get myself in trouble.
I think you have to be very open-minded. I speak to so many, as you know, so many homeopaths around the world. Many have been on the show, many have just become friends, and everybody has different styles. Even within the classical approach, people have a way, they have their own way. So that's actually the beauty of homeopathy, because it's versatile, it's flexible, it's adaptable, it's modern, it's hip, it's current, it's you can mold it according to how you want to be a practitioner. And in a modern society, in a modern world, a technologically advanced world but a highly diseased world, there's nothing wrong with that, because the goal is still the same. Every single homeopath is committed to one thing: to get the patient better.
Exactly. And so, if somebody says to me, oh, I use this method or that method, but it works well for me, I'm hallelujah. Because
absolutely.
It is what we want to hear. So, yeah, absolutely. No worries there. And working in Nelsons means I see lots and lots of prescriptions and lots of people coming in doing their own stuff. I'm going to try this. Can you do this? I said, I can dispense anything you want. I can't guarantee that's what you need because I haven't had a consult with you. But yeah. So, and the wonderful thing is they can try it. They don't have to worry that, oh dear, I've taken too many, or they can try it, and it will serve them well, or it won't do exactly what they need because it's a guess. But yeah, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful, empowering thing.
It is. That is the key, isn't it? It's about empowerment. And you mentioned this at the beginning as well, about being able to manage your health care within a certain degree, of course, let's be realistic, but in the majority of cases. So, for example, just like you and many others, when anyone in my family becomes sick, including myself, I know where the remedies are. And there's that element of fear or that worry or the time of, oh my God, I must call a doctor, is gone. It doesn't even register anymore. It's like, okay, well, these are the remedies, take these, this is the protocol, and off you go, and everything's fine and dandy afterwards, you know. And it makes life so much easier, doesn't it? And it also makes life very productive, because you're not wasting time on fretting, if want of a better word, over something that is not that difficult to treat within homeopathy, for example. So a common cold, majority of people, or a sore throat, run to the doctor or the pharmacy and over-the-counter stuff and blah, blah, blah. And yet, you know, there's certain remedies and you take those and it's done and you carry on with your life, right?
You do. And you don't bypass things. That's what I like about homeopathy. I do believe that the body needs to have a clear out every now and again. And I do believe no matter how clean you try to be, we live in quite a toxic environment, especially in cities and all the rest. And the body needs to have a little, hang on a minute, I need to stop and have a clear out here, especially if you're not sleeping well and things like this. But what I believe homeopathy does is it just gets behind that process and makes it effective and works it through, and doesn't allow it to dally so that your sinuses become full of bacteria and infected. It gets behind it. And that's one other thing that I heard said once that's not attributed to me, but it was, I thought, quite amazing, was I say the body doesn't engage in idle chatter. So if it's telling you something, if it has a symptom, it just wants you to listen to it, because normally it just gets on and you don't know it's even doing all these processes. But somebody once said the kind of medicine, pharmaceutical, even if you like, or even, I don't know really, maybe medicine training, is kind of, you see a symptom as a problem. It is a feature of a disease. Whereas homeopathically, we should see a symptom as the language of what the body's trying to do to rectify the situation. So it's not against you. You're not fighting it. At this moment in time, because of a situation that's occurred in my body, inflammation is occurring in my bowel, just say. This is the body's way of trying to maybe remove the said thing that's causing the problem, or so that the body's trying its best to actually alleviate the problem. But if it's struggling due to low immunity or the environment or lack of resources within its own makeup, then it won't do the job very well, but it's still trying to do the job. So a disease hasn't hijacked my body. My body's symptom is my body saying, hang on a minute, got a problem here. I'm doing this to try to rectify it. Can you help me? Which is, so I see, that's why homeopathy matches the symptom picture, because it says, we'll get behind that symptom. And we'll help it do that properly. Which I just thought was wow, which is why doctors who become homeopaths who are homeopaths have often said, and I've been at many conferences where they've said sometimes they have to take their head off and put it on upside down when they're doing homeopathy, because it's kind of not the way that medically they've been trained to, that the disease is something anti to me. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I thought, yes, the symptom, I believe your body is always on your side.
It's a lifesaver, because if we were, let's say we did become sick and there were no symptoms, wow, that would be a bad place to be in, because we wouldn't know. We'd die, wouldn't we? Because we wouldn't know.
Yeah, but we don't want to suppress that symptom. We don't want to say, okay, we can hear you shouting from your gut lining, but I'm going to give you something where you can't feel it anymore. Because, you know, I always say that's just putting tape on a crying baby's mouth. It's still occurring. Whereas we'll say, right, let's match that symptom.
Anna, you'll be surprised to know that we are out of time. That has been a fascinating conversation, and I have so much to ask you. So I am going to ask you to come back.
I'd love to come back.
So that we can finish the first part of the conversation. The second part was actually going to be me inviting you back to talk a bit more about something else, but I think we need to cover this. There's so much more that we need to talk about, and so many questions I have for you. But for now, it's until part 2. And in fact, we could probably have a trilogy of these. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
You're telling me I talk too much now.
No, it's been fascinating. I think it's been really, really good. A very good insight and a wonderful conversation, of course.
Thank you. That was lovely. Thanks very much.
It's really delighted. I am still delighted to have you on the podcast, and I will speak to you very, very soon.
It was a pleasure, Atik, and I hope you feel so much better later.
Thank you. I do hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Homeopathy Health Show. Please do support the show by clicking follow on my socials. Remember, the more exposure the podcast receives, the better for homeopathy around the world. You can find me on Instagram by searching for @like_treatslike, and on both Facebook and TikTok by searching for @like_treatslike. So let's promote the voice of homeopathy on radio and podcast around the world together. Don't forget to visit me online at www.liketreatslike.co.uk and click on the radio and podcast tab. Here you'll be able to see all the guests that have joined me on the show so far, and of course you can stream on demand the latest episode to your mobile, tablet or PC. Until next time, stay safe and take care.